The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users, on demand on iTunes and on YouTube. And thanks to our friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we are syndicated to cable systems serving an additional 12 million households. I'm your host, Gary Baumgarten. We have a great guest today, Karna Small Bodman. She's a former Reagan national security aide. Her second novel is out. It's called Gambit. It's like snatched from the headlines, talking about bad guys, terrorists shooting down planes with rocket-propelled grenades and such, rocket launchers, handheld or shoulder-mounted rocket launchers. It's a scenario that's very possible, very real, unfortunately, in this world. We're going to talk to her about her novel and about the realities of life that it's based on in just a moment. But just before we get to Karna Small Bodman, I want to bring in Alan Jacey, our political correspondent, because there are two breaking news stories today on the political front. The biggie is Mr. Romney. Mitt Romney has withdrawn from the race. And the other is Hillary Clinton is reaching into her own purse to the tune of $5 million, loaning that money to her own campaign, funding her own campaign. So I just wanted to talk about that very briefly. Alan, welcome back to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com. Are you surprised by Romney's removal of himself from the race?
Yeah, Gary, I really am surprised. I thought that Romney wouldn't cut and run, I guess to use a Republican phrase. I thought that Romney felt that he would be in there, pick up more Western states, and probably forestall McCain's quest to the convention.
Yeah, well.
Also,
yes.
No, I was also going to say, on point two, while Hillary's loaned herself $5 million, she seems to have gotten back on track. Since February 1st, her campaign has raised $7.1 million. So I guess she has a little bit of mo back in her camp when it comes to raising money.
About roaming alone writes in our virtual auditorium, it seems that Romney suspended himself. Could it be that my prediction of a McCain-Huckabee ticket is getting a little closer? Obviously, McCain is taking a lot of heat from the conservative wing of the Republican Party. What about that? Do you think that he brings Huckabee on as his running mate in order to unify his party?
I don't know if Huckabee would be the guy to unify the party. He certainly brings the evangelicals to his camp. Obviously, we saw what happened on Tuesday, that carrying all the southern states with their heavily weighted evangelical vote, he certainly acquitted himself nicely that night.
And lastly, the President of the United States, I believe, takes home a salary of $400,000. We know there's a lot of other perks, but why would somebody spend $5 million of their own money for a job that pays $400,000?
Dedication to service.
Well, you're very kind to the junior senator from New York City, Alan Jacey. Thanks for joining us. Well, as promised, Karna Small Bodman is with us today. She served in the Reagan White House for 6 years as senior director of the National Security Council. She was the highest ranking woman in the Reagan White House. She has woven those experiences into her novels, first Checkmate and now the sequel Gambit. Both books were inspired by President Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative. We used to shorthand that in the news media by calling that Star Wars. They feature a brilliant woman, a scientist who must race against time to invent a new technology for a missile defense challenge. I've just started reading Gambit. I can tell you it's ripped right out of today's headlines. In the story, airliners are shot out of the sky with a new type of shoulder-fired missile. Thank God that has not happened, but the threat really is very real today. There are over 500,000 of these kinds of missiles available in the world today. Russia, China, and various Middle Eastern countries are producing them. So I've invited Karna Small Bodman to not just talk about her novel, Gambit, but to discuss the threats we are facing today and what systems we have or don't have in place to counter them. Karna Small Bodman, welcome to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Well, Gary, thank you so much for having me on your program. I'm delighted to be with you today.
Well, we're delighted to have you as a guest. There are a lot of people who claim to know a little bit about the terrorist threat that the nation and the world faces, but you obviously bring real life, real world credentials with you. And when I was offered this opportunity to invite you on the show, I just had to grab at it. So tell me how realistic your novels are. I got to tell you, I started reading Gambit. It's pretty chilling.
Well, that's true. It is a very chilling scenario. I try to make the novels as realistic as possible. I mean, there are so many things in the books, both Checkmate, the first one, which is out in hardback. It'll be out in paperback in March, and Gambit, which just came out 2 days ago. It's in the stores right now, hopefully on the front table somewhere. Very, very realistic. I did a lot of research for these stories, both with our Missile Defense Agency people, with members of the NSC that I had worked with former ambassadors, with several officials at our Department of Homeland Security. In this particular book, also the head of the Airline Pilots Association, other pilots, a whole host of people involved in this particular issue, as well as sources inside some of our defense contractors. So yes, it is realistic, and the story, as you said, begins with some group, we don't know who, is taking down a couple of our airliners. We don't know why either. And this is a very real threat today, and it's based on current events. There was a story in USA Today, front page, just a couple of weeks ago, on this very issue, and another story in the Washington Post. Of course, I wrote the book some time ago now, but it's out there. Here's the situation. As you mentioned, there are over 500,000 to 1 million of these shoulder-fired missiles floating around. I mean, they're out there. People can, terrorist groups could easily get a hold of them. And the idea of taking down a plane or two is not that far-fetched. Now, just imagine what would happen to our economy, the desire of people to fly or whatnot, if this occurred. If a plane or two were to go down from a missile strike. After 9/11, we had answers for that type of an attack on our country. We could harden the cockpits, we could arm the pilots, we could put U.S. Marshals on board, things like that you could do right away, or pretty soon. But with this particular challenge, right now, there isn't anything you can do right away. Now, we're working on it. Here's the situation. The Department of Homeland Security does have and has had contracts out with a couple of defense contractors who have been working very hard to adapt military technology for use on commercial planes. Okay, they've developed this. There are good technologies, but the problem is they're testing them.